Welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, Conversations from the Front Line, a podcast and live show for survivors and the leaders who support them. I'm your host, Kelly Humphries, a survivor of child sexual abuse, advocate, author, speaker, ambassador, a lover of all things outdoors, with over 15 years of law enforcement experience. Please support me in my mission to break cycles of abuse and trauma. You can help by donating to my Patreon account at patreon.com/Kelly Humphries. G'day guys, and welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel. We're at episode 11. I am so excited to have the amazing Milthorpe family with me tonight. I've just met these incredible, awesome foursome at the National Child Protection Forum, and they were just so inspiring. And I just said, guys, you just need to come and join me on Off the Cuff with Kel. So welcome, guys. I'm so happy and excited to have you here to share your story and make some ripples with me. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's going to be different, guys, tonight. I'm not used to having more than one person at a time, so bear with us. This is going to be a very interesting episode. So before we go any further, though, I will just advise you guys that some of the things that we will talk about tonight might be a little bit difficult. So you might find some things that we talk about triggering, but there are some support numbers on my website at kellyhumphries.com if you do feel you need to talk to someone. So please make sure you do that. So guys, how about we just start with a bit of an introduction. We'll start with Michelle and Brent. If you want to introduce yourselves, and I get the girls to introduce yourselves, I think that might be the easiest way to do this. So starting with you, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. And what do you want to know about this, girl?
Just, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll hand over to Brent.
Yep. I'm the mum of 3 magnificent daughters. We've got Pippa and Rose here. We've also got Maggie at home. We live in Albury, New South Wales. We moved here from Cootamundra. So I think there were a couple of people from Cootamundra that were wanting to have a look tonight. I'm a teacher. I work with teenagers, and I love what I do. So that's me in a nutshell. My feet are frozen because I've just been coaching netball, and it's only about 8 degrees here at the moment. So, yeah.
I'll hand over to you, Brent.
I'm Brent, and I'm the token male of the family. So, look, I've been in construction. That's what I do for a living. I work in an office now. Used to be on the tools, but now probably found a bit of a new passion with the Rural Fire Service. I'm involved in that now. Played a lot of football and sport, and the kids are letting us doing all the driving now. So we do all the driving for them.
Just you wait till you have to teach them to drive, Brent.
We've done twice. One to go.
Oh, you've well practiced then, so you should have some patience by the time you're finished.
Yep.
All right, girls, over to you. Pip, let's start with you.
I'm Pip. I'm 18 and currently in year 12, so I only have like 10 weeks left, I think, of actual schooling and then some exams, which is exciting. But yeah, I don't know. There's not much about me.
I'm sure there's a lot more about you, so you're not counting the days or anything.
Oh, no, not at all.
No worries. What about you, Rose?
I'm Rose. I'm 14. Yeah, there's not much to know about me either, so pretty boring.
So not true. You're both Warriors. I know that you want to play in the AFL Women's League. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. One of my goals to achieve, and I reckon I'm going to get there, but it's going to take some time.
Good on you, mate. And what do you want to do when you finish school?
Well, I might have a gap year next year, but I want to go to uni, and I think I want to study paramedicine and nursing.
Hell yeah. Always need paramedics.
Yes.
They work well with police. So you said I thought you wanted to be a police officer, Rose.
Oh, yeah, I definitely do. That's one of the things I want to do, but I reckon I want to do a trade first, and then once I get to that, like, 19, 20, start going to try and go for that police force and see how well I go. But that's where the path leads me.
You got a good reference right here, eh? All right. So, guys, like, you've had, like, an incredible journey to get here. And, I mean, I know just hearing you at the conference recently, it's only such a snippet of what's, sort of happened with you guys. And I don't want to go like right into like Pip and Rose, like your stories of actually getting through your child abuse and things like that, because I'd rather concentrate on the journeys up to this so far, because there's just so much that's so empowering that we can take and that you can share with those who are listening. So if you could just step us through just a little bit of your journey to get to this point here, because I know you've done some amazing stuff. You've got the Justice Didn't Hurt campaign. You work with the wonderful Nina Funnell, news.com.au, and you've made some big changes in the New South Wales courts. So I'd love to hear about that journey. If you guys could step us through that. I don't know who's best to start that conversation.
We could
you
probably
guys
start. Yeah,
Let the dog in first.
we're just going to let the dog in because the dog's noisy. So, Michelle, you start.
We've got a dog who thinks he's a human and he wants to be part of this too. Look, I think if we go right back to the beginning, we found out in 2013 that the girls had been abused by a good family friend of ours. Rose was 5 and Pip was 8.5 at the time. Obviously, it changed a lot of things for us, and it changed everything. We sort of thought we were, nailing things. We nearly had all the girls at school. We'd done the preschool, school, and childcare drop-offs in the morning, for a number of years. And we're sort of looking forward to that end of that period where they'd all be in one place. Anyway, obviously it shook us, and we sort of call it our parallel universe. We slipped, jumped tracks there for a little bit. And then we entered this world that we really were not equipped for. And I don't think anyone is ever prepared for the types of things that happened after that. We ended up obviously going to the police, and the man was charged with his offences. And then we were in this holding pattern for about 2.5 years until the girls went to court. And I suppose what we found in that time was that as well-meaning and wonderful as all the service providers and the people that we're involved with were, it was a really difficult space to navigate as a family. And it was probably only that we questioned and, asked questions all the time about what was happening and why it was happening and who we should go to and things like that, that we were able to probably navigate that space, and also we had a lot of support with our family and friends around us at that time too. So it made it a little bit easier for us. The court process in itself, we really expected that to be a healing and empowering experience. And we were grossly naive about that, because that's certainly not what happened. It was a 2.5 year wait. The court case itself went for 4.5 weeks. We were in Sydney, so we were staying in Sydney. And I really feel that the girls were emotionally abused by that process. They were really traumatised. It was horrific. And that sort of, we finished that in 2016, and obviously we've moved on with things, and we've kept moving forward and those sorts of things. But in the back of our minds, it was always that process is not okay. It's antiquated. It's set up to protect the wrong people.
Yeah.
So I suppose in a nutshell, that is our story. Obviously, there's a lot more involved in that.
So, just a question for the girls. So, how did you find the courage to come forward and say what had been happening?
Well, Rose actually was the first one to tell.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I was only young, and obviously someone that's young wants to say that they don't like something, not knowing what it means.
Yeah.
So I said it, obviously not knowing what anything meant. And yeah, it just started from there really.
Yeah, well, it's very brave and it's a very hard thing to do as a young person. And I guess the reason I ask is because I do have a lot of actually really young women your age who actually watch and listen, and that making that actual decision to come forward is just so difficult sometimes. And I guess I just find that so courageous because I know what that's like, you know. I know what that moment is where you kind of like not really sure what's going to happen and what mum and dad are going to think, and you know what, whether they're going to love you still or not. And you know, like those are the things that went through my head, even though rationally I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure they still will, but there's this part of me that was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure.
In trouble, so I was
Yeah,
just, oh, I don't really know what was going on. So
yeah. And then what about for yourself, Pip?
Well, like, obviously, I didn't choose to tell mum and dad. It was like Rose started the conversation and then it kind of continued on to me. And I didn't want to say anything to mum and dad, but I'm 3 years older than Rose, so I kind of knew more about the situation than she did. And I knew it was wrong and I just wanted to protect her more than anything. So I did tell mum and dad. And I think that's probably where my courage came from, was knowing that by speaking out, it was helping Rose more than anything.
I love that. And the power of a protective big sister. I just, this is the part I think that I just want to jump and give you guys a big hug, because I think like I understand that, because like even though I didn't know anything was happening, nothing happened to my siblings, I always worried something would. So that's why I didn't say anything. And the power of you speaking up, Rose, gave Pippa the courage to then speak up. And that's the power of this conversation and being able to share like this. Like I have goosebumps, you guys, and it's freaking cold, but I'm like, you know, like it's just so powerful. And I don't think you realize the ripple effect that can happen from these conversations, and it's just so important. So well done to you guys. And to Michelle and Brent, like that moment, like I can imagine felt like your stomach fell through the floor.
Well, I remember it was 8 o'clock on the Sunday morning, and the girls hadn't been sleeping but leading up to this, not knowing obviously before that. But I remember seeing someone, must have been Rose, come down to our bed during the night and we did a half-time stop over. So I went and jumped into Pippa's bed, and because she had a queen bed. So, and then Michelle woke us in the morning and she looked like someone had died. So I knew something was up on her face. I just wasn't sure what was going to unfold. But then once that conversation started there, that was, the worst thing that any parent, especially for me as a father who's meant to be the protector and everything like that, could have heard, was that firstly it was the first child had been abused, but then obviously as we found out later in the day or that morning, there was two involved. So
I've it's interesting you say that, Brent, because that's the same thing my mum and dad said. They felt like someone had died, and I don't think we kind of talk about that enough.
And I think the thing that a lot of people have this misconception of is that when if someone had asked me before it all started what I do, I'd be like every other person, every other male that goes, say, I'm going to go and get me there. But what really happened is that you see your kids in a state and you see your family so broken that your first instinct as a father or a parent is just grab it, hold them close, and all of a sudden we're 2, 3, 4 weeks down the track before you sort of can even start gathering your thoughts about the perpetrator, for instance, in this case.
Yeah. No, I think what when we ended up actually having conversation, I just love you guys that you've been able to stick so close together, because I sort of told my family and then I buggered off on a scholarship to America, and we never actually got to have this conversation. But it's really about that loss of kind of how I understood it, and I'm still learning too. Like when more I talk about it, the more I kind of get little light bulb moments, and it's like the loss of what could have been.
Yeah.
And
especially for the kids, I think it's for us, it's that loss of innocence. That, that I suppose for us, you dream that your kids are going to go and have that nice childhood and they're going to get all the schooling and enjoy their sports and do all that sort of thing along the way, and you're just going to enjoy the ride with them. And then all of a sudden, that innocent factor's been taken completely away. So you question all that's going on. Look, there's no handbook for it. There's no, like Michelle said, the navigational process of all this was difficult. There's no person that just you call upon where you got to go to and they give you all the answers. You got to work it out for yourself, unfortunately.
yeah. So what about the next step that happened for you guys? So moving forward, so you've made you spoke to the police. What was that process like for you guys?
I suppose that's another thing. You sort of think that you're going to have this life-changing moment and learn this thing. The natural instinct for us at this point, we know that we have to somebody else to do it for us. Yeah, so I thought that the first response would come, and that would be the start of the process for us. They would turn up and, we'd sort of hand over the information to them and it would all happen from there. And it wasn't like that at all. They turned up to our house. We had to keep the girls away from them. Like they weren't actually allowed to have contact with the girls, which first was that's part of their and they took a report from Brent and I. And, in the morning, I kind of went into autopilot mode. And as I said, I'm a teacher, so I'm a mandatory employer. I've had to every year around this sort of thing. And, I sort of ran on autopilot, I think, for the morning. And then when these people turned up, like I can honestly say I felt like I was an out-of-body experience and could just pace up and down the room trying to work out why how Rose could have known that. And so even that whole process was really strange to have them come into the home and sit there and I had this at conference, I looked up in that process and this big burly policeman was in our lounge room space, and that's Oh, sorry, we're having a mic issue.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're just having a few mic issues, so it's all right. We can edit this part out. Just keep the mic nice and close, guys, and just make sure it's plugged in tight there.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that.
So can you hear us properly?
That's better. Just stay close.
So I think on top of that, I mean, for us too, because we had two kids involved, almost straight away, our brains went to keeping them somewhat separated on this first day as well, because we didn't want the authorities or whatever, anyone else being able to say that this was together and there was contaminated evidence and all this sort of stuff. So our brains were already starting to think.
And those words sort of became, more apparent during the process. But I think naturally we kind of knew that we had to do that, which I don't know if that's weird or not. Who knows? But yeah, that process was difficult. And because our kids were considered safe, by the authorities, which of course they were safe because we weren't going to let them weren't going to let them be in his presence again. So we kept the priority by the police, which I can understand if I'm not involved at the time. But for us, that was really tricky because it just meant that we just waited 8 days until we could speak to the actual investigators. And again, as I said, not knowing the process, being thrown into this other world was really confusing.
Yeah. I can imagine. And then was it like that for you girls too? Do you remember?
Honestly, I don't know about you. I don't remember pretty much any of it. The way back I can remember, like the furthest thing back, is actually going into the police station. I don't remember the day that we told. I don't really remember anything like that. Like I remember some of the things, but it's not like a clear.
And I think the reason they don't remember is because what we did was the next day they went to school.
We tried to keep things as normal as possible.
Yeah.
And we didn't tell anyone. We kept it within the four walls at that point of time. I mean, we didn't tell family or friends or anyone at that point, and because I think in our own minds we probably didn't really think it was real. And then I think secondly is that the person that was involved in this was involved in the community and been here a lot longer than us. That who's going to believe us, or is it going to be the kids that are going to believe?
We're just going to try and plug in the mic.
Is that better? We got rid of the mic.
That's better.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So basically, so we went from a point where we sort of, I suppose, we pulled ourselves right back out of everything, and even taking, say, Rose to or the girls to any of their sporting events or school drop-offs. It was like we were waiting for someone to come around the corner. We didn't want anyone else to know what was going on. We had and this is probably a bit me, like where I'm sort of in my headspace, I was sort of thinking that we had to protect them more and more now. So we didn't want anyone else knowing. And it wasn't until how long later that we sat down with your
Yeah, about
family.
4 weeks. Well, it was 4 weeks. It probably felt longer, but yeah. Oh, look, and I think, it goes back to that thing that there was a part of us, and I certainly had feelings that people wouldn't believe the story. And yeah, but we also just wanted to keep things normal for the girls. And I really struggled with that for a little while. When I reflected back, I said to a counsellor one day, I cannot believe I sent them to school the next day. And she said to me, but what you've forgotten, Michelle, is that their world actually got better that day. It was your world that changed.
Yeah.
And it was, that's sort of my out. Sorry, girls, but you would have learned something, I'm sure.
I think it's actually really important because I'm writing a healing course at the moment, and one thing I'm encouraging people to do is embrace the healing as it comes, because what we tend to do is make this thing so big and so insurmountable that we just don't even cross the mountain. We don't even try because it just seems too hard. And I think when we just take these steps as part of our day-to-day routine, we can do the healing in our day-to-day routine.
Yeah.
That's just how I look at it, and it's just a different perspective, but I think it's an important perspective.
And for me, I had a boss that was really great for me, and he told me I could do whatever I want, but he encouraged me to keep coming to work and being involved in work. So what that meant for me was I was just going to work all the time, but I would have that cry on the way to work, or I'd have that sort of outlet during lunchtime or whatever it would be when no one else was around. But normality was great in hindsight. So trying to get normality back into your life and trying to keep some sort of consistency there was what I needed, and I think that's what we did as a whole.
Yeah. So in all of this, there was a couple of big key gaps that you as a family identified that you felt were quite difficult. So for you guys, Pip and Rose, having to go through the experience itself, like what were the things that you thought should have been done differently to make it a less traumatic experience for you guys?
Well, obviously we had to have that 2-year gap, which means we have to try and remember something from 2 years ago. And I know for me that I had to remember the dates and like where it happened, and it was crazy to think that people would want me as a young child to try and remember dates from 2 years ago, because that's how it works. Like it makes me a bit mad that that's how they have to get their evidence in a way, and it's
Mate, I don't remember what I did yesterday, so I can understand exactly what you're saying about having to try to recall something, especially when you're a kid, and you don't even know what day it is when you're a child.
Yeah, like having the language more appropriate for the kids would have, that would just change like everything by itself.
Yeah.
I still remember there was a question that I was asked, and it was about where there was like a craft tub, like just not one of those clear plastic tubs that you get from a shop. And it was like, where in the room was that? And I was like, I don't remember. Like, I haven't been there for nearly 3 years. And they're like, but if you were there, you'd remember. And I was like, I don't know. I was flustered because I was like, I don't remember where that was. I can tell you what happened, but I can't remember where in a room a tub was. Like, it just felt like it was so irrelevant, and they were trying to trick me into saying something that wasn't necessarily true. And like they kept going with it and asking me the same question, trying to kind of tell me that it was here, but was it there? Like, and it felt so irrelevant. But I was like, as a kid, I didn't know what to do, and I was flustered, and I just broke down into tears and had to take a break because I was like I don't want to stuff this up. Like I don't know what I'm saying. Like, it was just, it felt so irrelevant, but I felt like I had to answer it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to put some context around how long the girls were on the stand for. So, Rose, can you remember how long you were on the stand for?
I just remember I had to go there multiple times because some silly
Yeah, so there was because there was a pre-trial first, because the first defence strategy is always to try and get the separate trials. So the girls actually had to listen to their evidence during that period of time too. So they listened to the evidence and then they did the trial, and they tried to separate them so that, there'd be two separate juries that never had any knowledge that there were two victims. So that happened first. So that was sort of a week. And then they impaneled a jury in the second week. That fortunately the judge kept them together. Impaneled a jury, and then Rose heard her evidence again. So when we say heard, they recorded her evidence.
So I think, Pip, you're on the stand. Can you remember how many days you're on the stand for? How many days were they on?
Yeah, so I think Rose was on for about 5 because she had to listen to everything a few times. And then Pip it went over a weekend. So I think she was nearly 5-6 days with lots of interruptions in between, legal argument and gamesmanship and all those.
Did you say the trial was 4.5 weeks?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mum. But I can't remember for sure, but didn't one of the jury fall asleep while I was doing mine?
Yeah, they did. So then they had to impanel a new jury. So Rose actually did have to listen to her evidence 3 times, which was difficult. And one of the things that happened to Rose while she was in there too was we had a witness support person that was supplied by the court, and she was lovely. We'd had conversations with her leading up to that period of time. And Rose was asked to read from her statement. Rose couldn't read. So the lovely person stepped up and turned the page for her. So she was on the right page. And they said that she was helping Rose. So she was then taken and she wasn't allowed back in the courtroom. Or in the room to help the girls. So, there was lots of little things like that happened that just kept delaying the process. And, again, it's a defence strategy that they've been allowed to use for a really long time.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to definitely change, because, that's what abusive partners do to their, husbands and wives when they're coercively controlling them. That's gaslighting, it's it's a way to make you come undone so that you don't kind of know your own truth.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of the things that we've discovered, you know, in this process, because I come from a very socially just family, some of who are sending their love to us in their comments. And it was really important to us that, you know, we went through this process so the girls could be re-empowered. Again, we were naive in that. Whilst we have an adversarial system in New South Wales and Australia, the court case is always going to be about who is the best arguer on the day. It's not about the humans involved in the trial. So
So I think it's important to probably bring online now is that the girls have been able to, and with their parents, Michelle and myself, we've been able to pick up what was the witness intermediary program or pilot program, which was run in New South Wales. That was only being run over a couple of jurisdictions within New South Wales. And the girls met with Dominic Perrottet in February, and he committed $63.4 million to the program going statewide. So now a lot of what we talk about won't happen to the next generation of victims coming through. So what will happen now is that the kids or victims will be interviewed within the first 6 months of the allegation.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Yeah, the allegation. And then basically they won't actually have to go to court because someone will be there that will work on behalf of, ask questions on behalf of the prosecution and defence. And it'll take that, I suppose, that really rigid, call it structure out of it and bring it back down to a child level to be able to give it some language and some evidence in what they can deliver, not what the adults in the room want to
Well,
hear.
it's supporting them so that they can participate equitably in the process.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the process of getting to this point needs to really be fleshed out too, because we couldn't have done it on our own. And it wasn't until the girls were able to do what we did last year so that we could get to this point. And I think, you know, well, Rose, do you want to talk about what your project was last year?
Pardon?
Did you want to talk about what your project was last year?
Well, my first idea was to ride around Australia for Bravehearts, which is like a foundation that like teaches people about child sexual abuse and making sure that there's people there to help you. But people in the family thought I was going to go for a year off school.
Can't have that, mate.
which was very sad because, I mean, it would have been helpful, but so I decided to ride from Sydney Downing Centre,
Which is where we did our court case.
yes, to Coast Harbour, which is
Where
Yeah.
our detective lives. It was on our case. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the idea, and that's what we went with, which was really, really good. And yeah,
So how
But
far
we-
was that?
Mum, you can track the case.
Oh, look, she did about 40 Ks a day because we did it. She did it as a mountain bike rider because we weren't going to let her ride an M1.
Hell no.
Sorry. Yeah. But look, you know, when Rose came to us about that, the girls obviously wanted to put some advertisement out there and those types of things. And we started hitting some barriers, and I started looking into, and we did say to them too, you know, like, you want to raise funds. Is there anything else that you think people need to know about this? And girls, this is where you say,
Court is shit.
yeah. You know, they did. They said court is shit. They wanted people to know that process was not okay for young people. But I just had in the back of my mind that about gag laws. We'd heard all of these things. And so I started doing a little bit of research, and I reached out to Nina Funnell from the Let Us Speak campaign, and Michael Bradley from Mark Lawyers, and just sent them an email to see if they could give me some advice about whether or not the kids would be able to do this. And then what happened next turned into this amazing amazing thing where we met the most incredible people that are advocating, and made it possible for Rose to be the youngest person in Australia to publicly use her voice to say, I'm a survivor and this is my story. And that wouldn't have happened without the input of Nina and Michael and Lauren and news.com.au, the team there, the legal team. They did that for us so that the girls could do what they've done, and also they've launched the Justice Shouldn't Hurt campaign so that they can look at what's happening, in New South Wales, and hopefully potentially one day look at what's happening for the rest of Australia, so that we can make this process more equitable, because it's something that we can control. It's something that we can change. It's just that we needed young people to be able to use their voice so that people's hearts got involved.
And I think it's probably important to mention our local member at the time, or still is, Justin Clancy. So Michelle went down and had a meeting with him, and they had to write to I can't remember. What did they have to write to?
It's just a petition.
Petition. They write the petition. That's the word I'm looking for. And they come back and said, you need 20,000 signatures. And we said, yep, no worries, that's fine. Is that all we got to do? And they said, yep, no, that's all you got to do. And the Peter, he's offside, and said, people were probably if you get 500, you're doing pretty well.
And without the team, without Nina, who's just the most amazing advocate and a survivor advocate, and that team at news.com.au, we wouldn't have got there. We got to 20,000. I think it was 27,000 signatures in 12 hours. And again, it's because people's hearts got involved. Our girls were able to tell their story and be honest about what was happening and get things done.
I don't think it was just the hearts. I think it was just people had a right of justice too. I think people, once they read the stories and they understood what was going on, people thought this isn't right. So it's
one of the biggest issues that there is that there's silence on this issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I started the ride, I had to go on my birthday because I wasn't allowed to speak yet, which was even like something that just is like another brick wall hitting, like you're running and just another one.
Should have taken up hurdles.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was it like for you girls to be the cover of the Justice Shouldn't Hurt campaign, and how did that feel for you?
Okay. I think at the start we kind of didn't realize how big it was going to be. So we're kind of like, oh yeah, like a couple of people will read it, and then it's suddenly trips to Sydney and doing all these amazing things and getting to meet incredible people and that sort of thing. It's like at the start we're kind of just like, oh yeah, we'll just be a couple of people will read about us and whatnot. But it's very it definitely gives us some confidence, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's very inspiring in ourselves. Like I wouldn't have been able to do it without Rose doing it as well.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without Pippa or mum and dad supporting us through the way.
But it's good because it means, and since then, like obviously there's people that, like other survivors that have come out and told their story, and it's amazing that like although we started voicing it, we're just the voice of every other person that's ever faced anything like this. So in a way, it just, I don't know, it's a really good feeling.
And what about you, Rose? The same?
Well, she always steals my words. Like it's the same. It's just incredible to see how much you can achieve in so little time. Like even with how you feel like you're not confident enough to do that, but then you have all this support, and it's just like boom, like you're booming, like you're crazy. And it's just such a good feeling. Like even being here today, like meeting you was like the best. It was so cool, and then getting in front of all them people, and they're coming to us and saying you're amazing. It's just like, well, I don't feel like that, but you make me feel it. Like you make me feel that.
And I think with that as well, like it's given us so many opportunities to go around, and getting to go to the forum last week, we got to go to Brisbane, which I've only ever been there for my sport before, and while we were there, like we were being told by other people that are doing amazing work, like in the same sort of direction that we are, and they're congratulating us on what we're doing. It's like, oh, it's amazing because it goes both ways. Like, although, yeah, we've said stuff, but you guys are the ones that are actually putting it into action, which is amazing.
You guys are putting it into action. Like I said, you inspire me. So you're the reason I do this, right? So it's mutual, my friend. I have a bit of a curly question for you. So did you feel brave when you came forward at the beginning?
I felt more nervous and then brave, but I had mum telling me and dad telling me by my side that you're brave and you're strong, and that kind of bumped my courage up a bit. But there was still that bit inside me that was like, oh well, should I really be doing this? Like,
So this is back when you were a little girl.
yeah.
What about you, Pip?
Like when I was younger.
Yeah, did you feel brave then?
I more looked at Rose and thought that she was brave for what she was doing. I think now when I look back, I'm like proud of myself. Got through what I did, and I spoke my truth and that sort of thing. So I think now I did, but I don't know back then. I probably was more scared and a bit confused than anything. But
yeah.
I was curious. That was my next question: was how do you feel now? Because there's a period that I know of growth, especially like, and I guess I'm going to reflect on my own story because I felt like an absolute coward when I came forward because I was like, how did I not know that I should have done this before? And I had the courage and the bravery inside of me to do this, but I waited so long, and then I look back now and I was like, now that I understand, I'm like, fuck, you're a fucking little legend, Humphries. And so.
Well, if we're talking about now, I've got a little secret. I used to have my Super Rose cape, and I used to think it didn't work. And now it's with my trophies. Like it's on my wall with my trophies just hanging there. And I look at it and it's just like, oh, damn, I'm amazing. Like, I'm up the world.
I love it. I'm proud of you girls. And I'm sure Michelle and Brent, you must be just so proud of the kids.
For sure. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I think when you touched on something there a second ago, Pip, about where you get your strength or whatever from. But I remember the very first time we ever went to the police station, and at this point of time, put it in sort of some sort of context, there was about 8 days since they disclosed. Pip had the shits because it had taken too long to get there. And then she wasn't going to talk to anyone. She wasn't going to talk to the police officer, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, by the end of it, when she knew that his little sister had to go, she would put a little sister out in front. Pip said, no, I'll go first. She sort of come back in and stepped back into the framework and took the responsibility. And I think that's the credit to the kids. Every now and then they can sort of bounce off one another for a bit of strength or I don't know what it is, but they sort of, I think that's been the whole group really. But look, I probably wouldn't mind putting it out there too is the strength of our friends and family as well, because, when we've probably been at low points, and I remember when I probably told one of my best mates first up, I took him down the back to the shed where we were living at the point of time because I didn't want to tell it around anyone else, and, told him, and basically he embraced me and whatever. And then during the court process, one of my other good mates, look, I was sitting down in the gym, Rose had a little teddy in the gym there and she was doing a little workout, and I'm thinking,
I'm sure you got big guns there, Rose.
Yeah. And I'm thinking I'm just about broken. Like this court thing had been going on for about 4 weeks and I'm just sort of reflecting and in my own little world. And, one of my mates walks out of the elevator and I'd seen him come through. It still brings tears to my eyes. Like it was just the most amazing thing to have people that are coming to, support you. And I think in the court in Downing Centre for us, that's 6 hours away. We had 22 or 23 family and friends come to physically come to the court.
Yeah, we had our eldest daughter there, Maggie too, and and she's always been super supportive of the girls. And, you know, she was sort of that jigsaw puzzle piece that was able to, you know, help things throughout the court process as well with her statements and things like that. So, you know, and she was a 13-year-old when we were in court. You know, what a horrible time to go through that, because being 13 is difficult for a young girl anyway. But yeah, look, we've been really lucky, and I know that sounds weird. There's a few things that we sort of call our lemonade, and one is that the offender wasn't a family member, which meant that it didn't divide our family, because I think you see that a lot. We felt like they were family. That was the relationship we had with these people, but we were able to close the door on them without it impacting so heavily on our life. So that was a bit of lemonade. We had, you know, we're reasonably intelligent. We're reasonably, you know, well-resourced, and our support. And as we said during the conference last week, Kel, we're sitting there with advocates and academics who work in this space all the time. You only need one of those things not to exist. You know, if it's not a good support, if it's not resources, if it's not education. And I don't know how you manage the process, because it's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we have to do what we're doing, because it's not for us. You know, and I'm not saying that flippantly. It's almost like we have a responsibility, because of our privilege, that we need to make sure that other children don't go through what ours did.
Yeah, and I think that's we kind of self-sacrifice ourselves on that's probably really bad sentencing there. But like, you kind of just throw yourself on them because you know it needs to be done. Like, I know that what I'm doing needs to be done, and there's just no plan B, right? So
Yeah.
I've signed up for life, that's it. But yeah, like, where there's a gap and it needs to be done, and you guys have made such an impact already. So it's just, yeah, it's so powerful, and I love the vulnerability of you guys that you're able to share so openly as well. And that's such a, you know, testament to you sticking together and supporting each other on the journey. So I just, yeah, it's a way, I think, to show people how to get through this. And if there's any tips, actually, that leads me to my next thing. So for you, Brent and Michelle, what message, because I have a lot of people in my network that have to, you know, constantly turn up in court, but what would you give, what advice to them would you give about this process and how to work with your kids through this process?
I think you need to ask questions, and you need to be prepared to advocate. And if you can't, you need to reach out and have those vulnerable moments where you say, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need you to help me, because I don't know. You know, even silly, like I even said that to the judge during the court process, because he said something to me that I just needed to answer the questions. And I said, well, I've never done this before. Because, you know, these are the things that, you know, become really difficult. Sorry, did we just drop out then?
No, you're right.
Okay. Yeah, so I think being prepared to ask questions and prepared to advocate. But we did try to keep normal. And I know it's a new normal, but, you know, the kids went to school, and some days they didn't want to go to school, but they still had to go to school. There were the occasional times when we could see that it wasn't okay. And when I say that, I'm not saying once a week, I'm saying once every, you know, once a term.
Yeah.
There might have been a time when it wasn't okay. But, you know, I think we just had to keep that happening, because if we stopped and anchored ourselves where we were, we wouldn't have been able to keep moving forward.
But I think I just seen a question come up there about how the girls' school handle it. That it's probably important, I think, to go on from that, where we probably, once we opened up to friends, family, and work and schools and everything like that. Everyone was super supportive. So everyone wanted to make it work. Everyone was on your team, the girls' team. So it's important to understand that probably what we didn't do well first up was trying to keep it in-house. I think we were sort of causing our own stress, causing a lot of guessing and that sort of stuff going on. So I think once we opened up to family, friends, and the other wider community, not putting it completely out there sort of thing, we were still trying to be private about it, but those that we trusted, our space become a lot better.
Yeah. I love it. So, girls, same question for you. What would you like to share with other kids that might have to go through this, or information for parents? So it could be for either or, so that parents or other children would need to know about this process that you've learned.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we need like our time. So yes, we'll tell what needs to be said up front, but I think we don't need to be pushed to ask questions. I mean, pushed for answers and that sort of thing. I think we'll be ready to talk when we're ready to talk. I think it's kind of hard to prepare anyone for this sort of thing. Like, it's hard to, and every situation is different, so it's hard to say, oh, like do this, this, and this. But I think the biggest thing is to know that there are people that are there to support, whether you're a parent, you're a victim, no matter who you are. Like it's all there, and no one's going to push you to say or tell what's happened and that sort of thing. Like obviously you need to talk to police officers and that sort of thing, but you just need to wait until you're ready and kind of come to terms with it yourself and know that there are those support systems around you and they'll always be there, and that's people's livelihoods to do that sort of thing. And I think for us, or for me definitely, it took a while to realise that it wasn't my fault, like I wasn't in the wrong for anything. I think that reassurance as well is quite important. So I don't know, that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Did Pip steal your words again, Rose?
She always does.
So what about you? What would you want to say?
It's obviously it's gonna be hard. It's definitely gonna be hard. And I know I was young, as I've said multiple times, but I've heard from Pip how she was struggling to talk, and because she felt like they didn't care. That's what she felt like. And I didn't go through that because I was just like, why not? It's just a conversation to talk about.
Yeah, I think it needs to be very age appropriate too. Like remember who you're talking to and that sort of thing, because obviously Rose didn't understand as much as I did what the whole situation was and what was really going on. So, I mean, you've got your supports, and it's just important to remember that you are talking to children and they'll know limited information, or some will know more than others and that sort of thing. So it's really case by case, I guess.
And like one of the things I tell myself a lot is like, you might not get over it straight away, and like it might take a lot of time, but you'll definitely get through it. So it's just funny.
Well, that leads me to my next question: is how have you guys managed to keep going the way you're going? Like you kicking goals, both of you.
Well, obviously, like I said before, it's very much we're all there for each other and we've got each other, and that's kind of the biggest support we have and motivation. But the other thing is that we have the opportunity to speak and have a voice, so why not use it, especially when there's other people that don't have that sort of I don't know if it's much of a gift, but that much of an opportunity. So I suppose it is both internal but also external factors. Yeah,
like as you can see with all these people commenting, like they're supporters, and it's way easier going do something and with the help and with the people that are admitting that they love you and telling you that you're like doing amazing. It's just like giving your motivation higher. I don't really know how to say the words, but
it's all right. You're saying it just fine. I understand very well, because I couldn't do this without the wonderful people that continue to show up for me. So I know, and they continuously show up, and even when I stuff up and say the wrong thing, which is never. I'm like, awesome. But, you know, like I know that it matters what I do because I hear from these amazing people. And that's why I will continue to show up. And I just, again, I thank you guys for being able to share so authentically, because it does make a huge difference. So what would have been the right support for you guys? So that's another question I have. Like at that time.
Like as in during the court case?
Yeah, so it's a bit, hang on, yeah, go with that.
So I think it's kind of hard to know because obviously it was very touch and go with us, like with Rose having a bit of a mishap in the court, in the room that she was in and that sort of thing. And I know I had almost a different person with me every day, but it was lucky because I got to have like family outside the room so I could go out and see them. But I think I struggled a lot because I did have 3 different counsellors in the time before court, like from disclosure to a court case. So I was kind of having to relive those sort of moments and tell again and again and again. But the biggest thing is that we had family. Like, I don't think I really, like, obviously it helps having that outside, those outside people that, you know, are your counsellors and work specialising that sort of thing. But having family, you just, I don't know how you do it without them, like, or even just the friends and stuff that stood by you. That's the most important thing for us.
Yeah, I think one thing I always talk about is early intervention, because I say that unhealed children make unhealed adults, right? So I just want to ask you about that. Like, I know you've had some extensive counselling and stuff like that. So how now, as young women, do you think that you're by having that support has helped you to grow and be where you are now?
I think it's made me realize, like, I've been given strategies to kind of cope with what's happening, and I've been able to understand, come to terms with things in a different light than what I would have been able to without them. And I think they obviously, especially like your counsellors and stuff that actually work for your sexual assault services, they know how to deal with different cases and that sort of thing. And I feel that they kind of prepared us as much as they could with the knowledge they had for what we were going to go through. So I think although it was an absolute shitty situation, we wouldn't have been able to go and do what we did and stand as tall as we did without having that prior knowledge and that preparation that we did have with those people in particular. And then even afterwards, like, they gave us an opportunity to just debrief and let it all out. And, you know, they would listen, and you don't really want to, I know some things that I don't want to tell mum and dad, like, it's more of a personal thing. And I know I can go and talk to someone like that and they'll listen and, you know, they'll give me specific strategies, but it's not like I have to really feel obligated to tell them, and it's not like it has to just be a dragging weight. You know, you just get it off your shoulders and that's that.
Yeah. Same for you, Rose?
Yep.
I just, there's this thing I call, it's just a survivor's independence, right? And, you know, we do this thing where we like think we don't need anyone because, well, we've survived this long, so why do we need anyone's help now? So the reason I ask that is because there's a lot of people that are out there who are survivors, who haven't spoken, who haven't got help, who haven't got support. And I ask that question because it's just so important. Even if you never report it, you never share it with anyone, is to share it with someone. And you hit the nail on the head, Pip, with someone who understands the specifics of child sexual assault or child sexual abuse, because it's different dynamics, especially when the person who's known to you, the abuser, is someone who's known to you. So for anyone who is listening, who does have a lived experience and has never shared, I really encourage you to find a space, a safe person to share with. You know, and like Pip and Rose have had some amazing support to find someone who can specialise and help you to understand what happened so you can move forward with power. So that's awesome, guys. So we just got a couple of quick questions. I think we've probably answered most of them because we're running out of time here. And actually, we've all covered those. But is there any other comments that you want to share, that like lasting messages that you want to give to anyone out there who like you might have a story? Like, what message would you want to leave with them?
one thing that I would say, and it's just short and sharp, but just know that people out there care, like they actually do care. Even if it doesn't seem like they do, they definitely do.
Yeah. And I think I touched on it earlier, but, we are the voices and we are talking now and we're being very loud, but, we wouldn't be able to do this without knowing that we are voicing other people's experiences and that sort of thing. So, although we are the forefront of this right now, it's not like, if you have your own story, it's not the same. We're just voicing it for the people that can't. So I think it's important to recognise that even if you're not speaking up and you're not doing that, we're here for you and we're here with you and we're all walking the same journey together.
It's beautiful. Is there anything you want to say about Justice Journey itself?
I think everything that we've talked about kind of covers it. We're just, trying to make things easier for everyone and make the justice system more just. And
And look, we're super grateful to people like yourself, Kelly, who provide a space for people like Nina Funnell, who just fight to make sure that that survivors are heard and safe and supported. Making sure that the process of getting the story, as Nina says, is better than the story itself. So allowing the space to talk and share is really important, because we don't want to be silenced anymore. The shame does not belong to survivors. And we need to keep that story going, so that other people have the strength and the courage to stand up to, and do it in a safe way.
Absolutely. Safe people, safe places. So, Michelle, just for yourself, is there any message that you would like to share with the mums out there who've got kids, who've got a story?
Oh, look, I just want to say, for parents who've had to listen to these things, you're amazing. Because I think that, the parents, there's trauma in listening to the things that have happened to children. So, I think that they need to take care of themselves too.
I was going to ask you that, but I wanted to ask Brent the question for the dads, because dads don't talk, dads don't share. So,
Yeah, I think I'd probably just go back a fraction further. So don't be predictable. That's one of the first things I would say before anything ever happens. So if I had my choice over again, I wouldn't be rocking up at 2:00 or whatever the routine is. Be unpredictable. So if there is a potential perpetrator or whatever in the environment, that you might catch them off guard early. That's the first thing. The second thing about for me, the family and probably more so my friends, and I've got a couple of really good mates that been to unload on them, because there is no, like, the girls had counselling, the girls still go to counselling. There's no thing for the dads, so that's not, there's nothing there. So I probably bottled it up for a while, and then it wasn't until I was able to download, and I still download on a couple of my mates here and now, every now and then. But it's good for me to be able to do that. Otherwise, it stays inside me.
Yeah. So my last question, before we wrap everything up, is how do you guys all look after each other? So as a unit and a family moving through this, because a lot of families, this destroys families, this separates families, it breaks families apart. So what is it that you do to help support each other when, because one person could be at like 10% and the other person's like pinging off the walls? Like, how do you work with the dynamics of this?
We live.
Yeah.
We live.
I don't know. There was a similar question at the conference that was asked for that, and I probably, in reflection, didn't quite answer it right. I mean, when you look at, except when Rose is doing that, when you look at our kids for us, and then you have people come to us and tell us how great they are and how strong they are, all of a sudden, if I'm at that 10% capacity like you're talking about, I get lifted back up, and I look to my kids or Michelle for a bit of inspiration every now and then to do that. And I think that's the thing, is every time one of us is probably down, we can look sideways to the next one, and that picks you up. So it's not always sort of dad dragging or mum dragging it's along. It's or it could be Maggie. Maggie could be bringing their sense of humour to the conversation because she'll say something silly.
Like send us a text message and say you all need to smile more.
Yeah. So it's the five of us. It's not the four of us. It's the five of us. And I think it's super important to remember that there is five in this group, and it's when one's down, someone else picks up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe Maggie will come on the next podcast with you guys.
Maybe. We'll see.
We're waiting for the text message. No.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a sense of humor is a really important part of it as well. And I totally, that's why I crack really shitty bad jokes.
You also don't worry, Dad does too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's his prerogative, right? All right, guys. So look, thank you so much for your time tonight. I just would love to like jump through the screen and like give you guys all a big hug, but I just thank you so much for showing up, being authentic. There's a lot that we didn't get to chat about tonight, so we may have to do a round two. Yep. But yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for everything. And guys, if you've listened tonight and you have enjoyed what you've heard, please consider being part of my Patreon group at kellyhumphries.com Patreon.com/Kelly Humphries. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen. And your support will help me keep the live shows running. I think they're essential because I think it's important for those out there to see faces, which is why we also run the live shows. So thank you guys for being part of it. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. And that's it. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And thanks to all the people that jumped on too, because there's some lovely comments there. So
It's beautiful. Thanks, guys.
So, yeah.
thank you.